Yes, my name is Hildigunnur Sverrisdottir. I'm an architect, live in Iceland and teach at the Iceland University of the Arts. For the past years, I have been a part of a research collaborative called Turf Fiction, where we investigate the turf tradition from different angles. Surely the building tradition itself, but we also dig into the critters living within the material, look at the sort of cultural heritage that comes along with the building heritage. And I was actually giving the title of this talk, Heritage or Brave New Traditions, and I was actually quite pleased and thankful for that, because I think we live on times that are quite daunting and are actually, let's say, the result of the world that Huxley was warning us about in his book Brave New World almost a century ago, where he describes a world where everything is quantified, everything is measured, everything has, in a sense, lost its soul, and we live more based on scientific precision and less in connection with our inner intuition and so forth. And in a way, this sort of modernist way of thinking and regarding the world is bringing us to this place where we, in a sense, are getting closer to a point of no return. Like I said, I come from Iceland, and this house that we see here, the turf house, is the main building tradition of this island for over 1,000 years. These houses are they are different, but many of them are in a sense a cluster of spaces or small houses organized around the corridor. Now, these houses could change over time, whether the times were good or bad. In good times, people would add spaces or houses to the cluster, and in difficult times, they would vanish or disappear. But these houses could actually stand for quite some time, well over a century, if they were maintained in the right way. Now, it was not only the houses that we used the turf building for. Space like pastures was also organized with these turf walls throughout the centuries. And at the beginning of the 20th century, 90% of the inhabitants of the island lived in rural areas in houses like this, whereas at the end of the century, 90% of the islanders live in urban areas. What happened also during that century is that Iceland became a sovereign state in 1944. And with that and along that came, of course, people educated from abroad and so on and so on. But there came this big urge of being regarded as nation among nations. And we very, very quickly adopted the modernist way of organizing ourselves, quickly forgetting the roots we were stemming from. This would be visible in city planning, in of course, all kinds of theoretical and political aspects as well. And along with that came what my colleagues in Turf Fiction have written about and called difficult or shameful heritage. People were ashamed that they had been born and raised in what was later called mudsheds. And hundreds and thousands of these were torn down throughout the 20th century. Like I said before, we also, of course, adapted a certain way of thinking through modernism. So archaeologists that were choosing which of these houses to maintain, of course, went for usually the houses of the rich people, but also were maybe more looking into trying to find certain symmetry or regularity when they were choosing houses. And like I will talk about a little later, might have sort of missed a crucial quality of the turf house by doing so. So my question today, both here, of course, but also as a teacher, is what can tradition teach us? What can the turf house teach us? One answer is, of course, the artisanal knowledge of cutting and layering turf. There are, of course, very few people left who actually know how to do so and are trying to keep this knowledge alive. There are many ways to cut the turf and lay the turf. And the sad thing is, and I worry a little bit, that sustainability in general is becoming the sport of the privileged few. It is quite expensive to have people lay turf walls and maintain them too. So here, as in so many of the sort of good things for us and for the earth, it is in a sense reserved to those who can afford it, and maybe also to the sort of the small scale. But we need answers fast, and I feel that there is an added quality to the house, actually many qualities to the turf house that I want to share with you today. One of them is placemaking. The turf house is never a house on a site. It is a house in a site. It's inherently a marriage between a house and the site. So a turf house actually lives within its environment and creates the environment along with the site. Another thing is actually what I would call an engineering brilliance that I would really like us to abstract and try to take into a more current setting. Just imagine that here on the island, there is actually, I mean, there are no trees, for example, to speak of. So there are no structural materials to build houses or even to cover houses. We had access to imported wood, very, very limited. We had driftwood and sometimes a shipwood strand. So through the centuries, people learned how to make the most of whatever structural material they could access, and in a sense made these refined structures, bearing structures, that they then sort of thresh the flesh of the earth up towards and to cover and to keep out the, of course, the cold and the wind and so forth. And another genius thing about it is that we live on a tundra belt, so the freezing line is approximately maybe half a meter down into the earth. But with the turf, you could actually sort of almost dig the house under the freezing line. So this is a knowledge that has sort of moved with the people of the island throughout the generations. Another quality which I actually think is central, and my colleagues Sigurjón Baldur Hafsteinsson has written about this and looked into this quality of anarchism. Essentially, the turf house is anarchistic in its being. The turf house doesn't even have to be made out of turf. Like I said before, people would use whatever materials they could lay their hands on, be it turf or stone or timber or later on corrugated iron or concrete when it came to that. And like I said before, these houses that we're about to see now were all demolished in the 20th century, and of course some of them were maybe not worth keeping as such, but one cannot help but admire the sort of the will to survive with whatever means there were. And like I said, we see the appearance of corrugated iron. We see clusters of houses made of different materials through different times, maintained with maybe a new material if people had the opportunity to get some. And that, in a sense, reflects, I think, another quality of these houses, which is resilience. This sort of reinventing, redefining what the structure and the space is, what it needs to be, and answer these questions in the context of any given time and resources. And I think these are qualities that actually matter if we want to change our course and start to heal ourselves and the earth, and sort of turn this huge ship of modernism around and make amends. Another thing is that we have sort of lost the essence, for example, of the word manufacturing. Today that means mass producing, and now we have contractors making houses by the masses, like little boxes dropped down on sites all over the place, without much thinking of who's going to live there and how that life will be. And I feel that we should maybe revisit the word manufacturing, which actually means making with hands. And whether it's literally making your house with your hands, I don't know, but at least start to sort of revisit thought of why are we building, who are we building for, and essentially caring for the people and the materials that we use. Another quality or thing I feel is extremely important is beauty, aesthetics. And sometimes it's hard to describe, but if we go to the roots of the words, since we're talking about turf, in Greek, it actually means to perceive, to feel or sense with your whole sensory system. So essentially what is beautiful is what makes sense. And if something makes sense, it's probably beautiful. So it is with these thoughts that here you have my turf mentor, the artist Hannes Lárusson, who was himself born in a turf house and lived in a turf house for the first 10 years of his life. I've been lucky enough to be able to take my students to him, where he introduces the sort of basic innate qualities of the turf house, re-questioning what is local, because I mean now we have all kinds of materials in the island, not only the turf, and how can we sustainably use these in a sensible and coherent way. Of course, they also get to learn how to cut turf and lay turf, but I think in a sense, like I said, on one hand, it's crucial to keep the sort of manual traditions, the artisanal knowledge alive. But I think one of the qualities that, or the qualities that the turf house can actually give us, is this merit of dwelling, of continuing the world through being within it, through understanding the horizon, through questioning the materials, to building slowly and sensibly, in short, making sense of things instead of building on and from the earth, rather build in it and with it. Thank you.